Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Black Health Trust. We are so happy that you chose to spend this time with us, and we trust that you will not regret that decision because today we're going to send the month of February on its way with its salute to Black History Month with our own twist on a salute to Black Health Trust. And without further ado, we'll turn it over to the founder, Dr. Randall Maxey.
Thank you, Dr. Neighbor Stevens, and welcome Dr. Ivan Walks, Dr. Jocelyn Hines, and Ms. Romero, and a special welcome to my friend and teacher, Dr. Richard Williams. I want to give a brief statement stating first, it is my honor to welcome you to this important discussion of the history of Black physicians in medicine, our triumphs, our struggles, and the lessons history continues to teach. The journey of Black physicians in America has been shaped by deep and systemic barriers like scientific racism that sought to justify exclusion, legal racism that denied access to medical education and practice, and governmental policies that reinforce health disparities in our communities. From the exclusion of Black doctors from the hospitals in the early 20th century and ongoing disparities in medical school admissions and funding for Black and Black health-led institutions, the challenges have been persistent and profound. Yet, despite these obstacles, we stand on the shoulders of giants, trailblazers of past and recent history who defied the odds to heal and uplift their communities. Their legacy continues through modern pioneers fighting for advancement in health today. The writings of Frederick Douglass, W.B. Du Bois, the 1619 Project, and the framework of the critical race theory reveal the enduring impacts of racism in medicine. Now, past injustices shape present realities. They also remind us that history is not just something to remember, but something to act upon. All this reveals that Black Americans, along with Indigenous people, two groups forced to be part of this nation, remain the most neglected beneficiaries of the Americas that we decided would be the global power that it is. This debt continues and lingers and not only is unacknowledged, but also continues to accrue and will continue to accrue until we as a society decide to tolerate it no longer. We Americans helped build the economic foundation that made the United States the global power that it is. Today, as we explore this history, let us reflect on what it means to the future of Black health, Black physicians, and the fight for health, true health excellence. Thank you very much, Randall Maxey. I would like to introduce Dr. Richard Williams, who's been with us many times. He's my personal mentor and teacher. He's a cardiologist. He's a member of the is a fellow of the American College of Cardiology, and he holds one of the coveted degrees called a DSC, a Doctor of Science. In addition, he is the founder of the Association of Black Cardiologists, and he is an expert and student of Black history in medicine, focusing on the Black physician. Dr. Williams, the stage is yours and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Maxey. Can you hear me and can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. This is a historic time in our history because of the challenges that we're facing with the current administration. I don't think I need to go into too many details in regards to what is happening on the domestic front in regards to the opposition to our moving steadily forward towards unity, health equity, and all of the things that have been promised for so long in regards to uplifting healthcare for all Americans and especially for those most in need. My presentation today is going to be somewhat time impacted, because it includes a lot of material, and I'd like to exercise my right of putting in kind of a waiver in advance. We're going to be talking about not only the history of Blacks in medicine, but also about those, as Dr. Maxey indicated, who have been very intimately involved in the emergence, education, and evolution of the Black physician in the United States over the course of so many years. I can't give the entire history, but I refer you to a little book that I wrote, which is called Blacks in Medicine, and I'm holding that up now. You should get this book because it's a compendium of 5,000 years of Black medical history. And many of the details that you would seek to look at are in this book, but I can't give all of those details, obviously, today. We're going to begin the slide presentation by indicating that this is Black History Month. May I have the first slide? So I guess that will be coming up. While that first slide is coming up, let me go on to say that we obviously can't include all of the deserving physicians who need to be recognized, but we'll do our best by giving you a presentation of those who are most deserving and most recognizable, and also some that perhaps you don't recognize so much. The whole purpose is to, as Dr. Maxey indicated, make you recognize the challenges and obstacles that we've had to face as Black doctors over the years. So this first slide shows that this is Black History Month, and we're honoring Black History Month by doing things like what we're doing today on the Black Health Trust. Next slide, please. So our subtitle is Evolution, Education and Emergence of the African American Doctor, and giving historical perspectives on that, presented to the Black Health Trust today. Next, please. I'm not going to go through all of this. This is some of my credentials. Dr. Maxey has already given several. I refer to myself and hope that you will as well as simply Dr. Richard Allen Williams. And I insist on making sure that you put that middle name in there so that I'm not confused with several other Richard Allens in our populace, some of whom are not the most liberal of people. Won't go further into detail on that. But listed here are several publications that I've made, including being the author of the textbook of Black-related diseases, which came out in 1975 and was a compendium of all of the illnesses that we could identify at that time that afflicted Blacks in particular. This was not known before. It was a 900-page textbook of medicine, which Dr. Maxey also contributed to as one of my fellow authors. And there are several others. That book has gone on to be included in the Smithsonian Institute in its historical archives. I'm quite proud of that. Next slide, please. So we'll go deeply into the historical background of Blacks in medicine. Next slide. We start with the ancient history, and I'm going to go very quickly through this on the way to talking about the individuals who've been very intimately involved. Next slide. So these are African American contributions to the history of medicine. Next. And this is throughout the ages, and you see the background of Africa, which is, of course, our heritage for the most part. Next. And our innovator and our principal heritage comes from Imhotep, who is pictured here. He was considered the god of medicine 5,000 years ago. And he was a Black Egyptian who built the first pyramid in Egypt and was recognized as the first god of medicine eons before others, such as Hippocrates, was given the same title. Next, please. So I, again, will not be able to give all the details, but you can see some of the indications of our Black medical history, starting back in Egypt and coming forward. Keep going. And through the years, there have been several involvements of Blacks in the development of various innovations in medicine. I'll point to some of the individuals who have been responsible for those as we go through. Next, please. Continue going. And we're coming more into the present time. Next, please. And so this indicates some of the individuals who've been very, very involved in those developments, including in the center, you can see Dr. Charles Richard Drew, who invented blood plasma during the Blood for Britain drive back in the 1940s and was considered an ultimate lifesaver because of that invention. We had a reception at Charles R. Drew University of Medical and Science for him this past week, which gave recognition, as we do annually, to his greatness. Next, please. And here are some others, including Dr. Lou Sullivan at the top, who is one of the top hematologists in the United States and was the founder of the Morehouse School of Medicine. Next, please. Dr. Mae Jemison is pictured here in 1992, who became the first Black female astronaut in history. She is an MD. Next, please. And in what I call the intermediate period, continue. These are what I call the earliest Black doctors and slave doctors in America. And you need to know about this heritage that we all have in our Black medical history. I've listed on the left, on your left, a number of individuals, all of whom I can't go through. The first Black doctor to be recognized in our history was Dr. Lucas Santamae, followed by Dr. James McCune Smith, and all down through others, Dr. John V. DeGrasse, Dr. A.R. Abbott, Dr. Martin Robison Delaney, who was the first Black medical student at Harvard University, Dr. A.T. Augusta, who was the first Black supervisor of Howard University College of Medicine, and Dr. Peter W. Ray, Dr. Edwin C. Howard. Those are just some of the earliest Black doctors, and we didn't have many back in those days. They emerged from the pits, so to speak, of discrimination and slavery, and went on to bring, to develop great contributions to our medical history. On the left, on the right, you see what I call the slave doctors. These are doctors who did not have formal medical training. I call them doctors because that would they practiced medicine and were in fact very talented physicians, as you might call them. The first one was Onesimus, who developed a vaccine for smallpox in 1721. No matter what you heard about Thomas Jenner doing that, Onesimus, a slave to Cotton Mather in Massachusetts, was the inventor and developer of that technique. I wish I could give you more details about that dramatic development because it was indeed revolutionary and saved thousands of lives over the centuries. Papin developed a treatment for venereal disease in 1729. Primus developed a rabies vaccine. Caesar developed a treatment for snake bite in 1751. James Durham was a practitioner in New Orleans, Louisiana, many, many years ago. He had apprenticed himself to physicians, never was formally licensed, but was recognized as the premier practitioner in that area, even though he subsequently was opposed in his practice and deposed from being able to practice because of discriminatory attitudes in that area. I practiced in New Orleans, Louisiana, around 1780 or so. So those are some of the individuals that you need to revere in our historical memory. Next, please. This goes on to give a few more details about some of them. Lucas Santomé, as I said, was the first Black doctor to practice in America in 1600. Next, please. James McCune Smith was the first Black to graduate from any medical school, even though he was not permitted to go to school in the United States because of discriminatory practices back in the time that he graduated from Glasgow University in Scotland in 1837. James McCune Smith. Next, please. I'm going to just run through this, the other next several slides, because these are all individuals who were involved in early practice as Blacks in medicine. Please go and keep rolling. Next, please. Stop here for just a second. Can you go back to that? I mentioned Martin Robinson Delaney. He was an MD who achieved his degree with great difficulty. In 1850, he was admitted to Harvard Medical School as the first Black person to attend there. But he didn't stay long. There was so much uproar among the students at having this Black person attend classes with the other Harvard students that he was cast out. And bear in mind that he was required to sit in a special, almost cage in the auditorium when lectures were being given. He and another student named Snowden and one other Black student were there. And ultimately, the dean, Oliver Wendell Holmes, of great repute, was the one who decided that it was too much for the white students to bear to have this Black medical student there. And despite the fact that he was uniquely qualified to be there, he was thrown out after about a year of study. He went on to receive his medical degree by preceptorship and entered the U.S. Army and became a colonel. And you see him there in his uniform. Great distinction. There's much more of his history, which you need to read about, because this man was indeed a true pioneer and a fighter for the education of Blacks in medicine. Next, please. Keep going. There's several others. Go on. Dr. Peter Ray, as I indicated, practiced in New York City in 1850. Most of his patients were white. Next, please. And here is another colonel who is a surgeon in the Union Army Medical Corps. Dr. John Van Serly de Grasse. Next, please. Now, turning to the distaff side, so to speak, here is Mary Eliza Mahoney, who was a nurse. She was the first Black woman to graduate from a nursing school in the United States, the New England Hospital for Women and Children School of Nursing in 1879. And that was indeed a feat. So we had ladies who went into nursing and also some who went into medicine. You'll see them in a minute. More, please. Next. Dr. Frederick Douglass Stubbs is one whom I definitely admire because he was born in my hometown of Wilmington, Delaware, attended Harvard Medical School, and was co-founder of Mercy Douglas Hospital in Philadelphia. He was a surgeon of great repute and died at an early age. Next, please. I put this in because of the fact that you need to know about some of the doctors who not only opposed Black doctors in our practice of medicine, but who did nefarious things from the standpoint of carrying on medical practice. This is one Dr. John Marion Sims, who was a gynecologic surgeon back in the 1860s or so, and 1850s. He was reputed to be the father of gynecologic surgery in the United States, but he was really a monster. You see this Black lady whose name was Anarcha, whom he used as a guinea pig for his experiments, especially on endometriosis, and did surgery on her in full view of observers without anesthesia, some 30 times as he traveled around the country exhibiting her and her sister slave girls, who were Betsy and Rosa. In any event, you need to know about those who were on the other side of things, so to speak. And this man was truly a monster. He, however, was revered by the white aristocracy in medicine and went on to become the president of the AMA and also had numerous statues erected to his memory around the country, including one in Central Park in New York. Just a few years ago, when I was president of the National Medical Association, we organized a group to go to New York to oppose that statue being there, and we got it removed and replaced by a statue of featuring the slave ladies that he had abused, including Anarcha, who you see here. So I think that it's important for me to tell you those stories, those kinds of stories, so that you can see what kind of abuse we have suffered at the hands of others. And I could tell you a lot more about the abuses that we as physicians suffered at the hands of the American Medical Association and other associations in refusing to accept us into membership. Next, please. Now, the first Black woman to graduate from medical school in the United States was Rebecca Lee Crumpler. I don't have a picture of her here. You do sometimes see pictures of her, but they're not true photographs of her. She was somewhat lost in history, but she was the first Black woman to graduate from a medical school in the United States in 1865 or so. She immediately went on to become a physician to the Union troops and eventually to the freed slaves who had no source of medical care when she moved from the north to the south to embark upon a treatment campaign for those freed slaves. Next, please. Now, in what I call the evolutionary period, that is post-slavery, next slide, there are many individuals that, again, we can't account for completely, but I'll simply mention their names. most of them were members of the National Medical Association. And let me stop here and I'll show you more about the NMA, which is, of course, an important ingredient in this whole story. But this is a photograph of the typewriter, which was used by Dr. Miles Link, who was one of the early presidents of the NMA and was the first editor of the Journal of the National Medical Association, the JNMA. Next, please. And you can see Dr. Lawless, Dr. Kenneth Lawless, who was a dermatologist of great repute, working in the Chicago area. Next, please. Also a president of the NMA. Here is a very unique individual, Dr. John Swett Rock, who was not only a doctor, a physician that is, a dentist, and an attorney. He was the first Black person to practice law in front of the United States Supreme Court. Next, please. And Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, who was the founding member of the National Medical Association in 1895. Before he got involved in NMA activities in 1893, at the hospital that he founded in Chicago, which was called Provident Hospital, the first Black hospital in the United States, he performed the first operation on the living human heart. The regular historical books will not tell you that. They will identify other people. But he was the first. He operated on a patient who came to him late at night in Chicago, having been stabbed in the chest. And he had what we now identify as a pericardial effusion, that is blood and fluid around the heart. And he was dying from that. Dr. Williams operated on this patient, was able to remove the fluid so that the heart would be able to contract normally, and saved his life. In fact, the patient outlived the doctor. So remember the name of Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. We call him Dr. Dan. He is a really true historical hero. Next, please. I think most of us know about Dr. Charles Richard Drew, who was chief of surgery at Howard University and Freedman's Hospital in Washington. As I said, he was the inventor of the blood plasma system in World War II, and again, a true hero. Dr. Drew, unfortunately, was killed tragically in an auto accident in the South and died because of the fact that he received insufficient medical care for his injuries. Next, please. One of my heroes and my mentor in regards to the history of medicine and many other things is Dr. W. Montague Cobb. Dr. Cobb was multilateral in regards to his genius and his outreach in regards to trying to teach doctors, treat patients, or at least advocate for the appropriate treatment through fighting against hospital discrimination, and also was the person who was a major historian of Blacks in medicine. I like to feel that I borrowed some of his mantle in regards to that. He taught me a great deal in regards to how to look upon medical history, and also about how we needed to engage in things that we have faced down through the years in regards to healthcare disparities. I can't say enough about Dr. Cobb. I wish I had time to spend the whole program on him. He's so deserving. But in any event, remember Dr. W. Montague Cobb. We have the Cobb Institute of the National Medical Association named for him, as well as a building at Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science in Los Angeles. Next slide. this is one of my favorite people, Dr. Alexa Canady, who was the first Black, not only female, but the first Black neurosurgeon in the United States, male or female. And she was an unlikely candidate to even get to that point. You have to read her history. But she wasn't even sure she was going to be able to qualify for medical school. And she went in deep into her faith and to mentors. It shows how important mentorship is, and got the kind of uplift that she needed to go on, and became indeed a great neurosurgeon and someone that we need to revere in our history. Dr. Alexa Canady. Next, please. One of my friends, Dr. Marilyn Hughes Gaston, also a friend of Dr. Maxey. Again, someone we can't say enough about. Pardon. But Dr. Gaston is a former assistant U.S. Surgeon General and Rear Admiral and an esteemed researcher in sickle cell anemia. Well, that says a lot, but not enough about her involvement and her impact. Let me just take, for instance, sickle cell anemia. Back in the day when she was Assistant Surgeon General, she observed the fact that there were so many children with sickle cell anemia who died in infancy from pneumonia. And nothing really was being done about it. We had antibiotics for sure, but they weren't being treated. She was able to convince the powers that be within the federal government that we needed to pass an edict that all children born with sickle cell anemia should immediately prospectively be treated with antibiotics. It saved hundreds of lives because of the fact that those children then did not go on to develop pneumonia. But there were other things that she did in regards to benefits for people, children, and people with sickle cell anemia. So remember Dr. Marilyn Hughes Gaston. She is still with us and just has been a powerhouse in regards to doing things that we needed to treat this dread disease. More about sickle cell, hopefully later if we have enough time. Next, please. This lady is one of our local heroes here in Los Angeles and should be a national hero in regards to her exploits in medicine. Dr. Patricia Era Bath. There shouldn't be an E on that. It's B-A-T-H. And Dr. Bath unfortunately passed away during surgery in 2019, much too prematurely. She was an ophthalmologist at UCLA and one of my contemporaries at UCLA. She never really got the kind of credit that she deserved for all of the things that she did, including over 100 patents, mostly associated with ophthalmology. She was a major contributor to the development of the LASIK eye treatment technique. And that is something, of course, that has benefited millions of people worldwide. She was definitely one of the big experts in the use of the excimer laser in ophthalmology and many other inventions that really had nothing to do with ophthalmology that she created. She was an absolute genius, a wonderful person, and sorely missed. Dr. Patricia Bath. Next, please. Here's someone that we call doctor, but he did not earn a medical degree in medical school. Vivian Theodore Thomas. Dr. Vivian Thomas was the young man who was essentially an assistant, a surgical assistant at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. And he actually created the Blue Baby operation that saved the lives of hundreds of babies at Johns Hopkins University. I think Dr. Barbara Neighbert-Stevens knows about that and perhaps could talk to us more expertly about what the Blue Baby operation had to do with and the benefits that it brought to people. But he did not receive the credit that he deserved for the work that he did. He actually guided the hands of the great ballyhooed surgeons at that time in the operating room and showed them what to do in operating on these babies. He had worked out everything in the laboratory and gave them guidance. People like Dr. Alfred Blaylock, who is storied in surgical history. He was the one that created this operation. Years later, actually, after his death, he received an honorary MD degree, and his portrait now hangs in Johns Hopkins University, as it certainly should. He should have received those credits and all of that recognition well before, but instead he was pilloried with all sorts of accusations of not of fraudulent operations. Next, please. Dr. Mae Jemison, who, as I said, in 1992 became our first Black female astronaut. She is still on the forefront of representing us, that is, Black physicians, in medicine, and frequently goes out and gives talks in regards to making certain that people recognize the importance of Blacks in medicine and the importance of overcoming healthcare disparities. Next, please. I don't know whether you can see this well enough, but this handsome gentleman is Dr. Robert Fulton Boyd. He was also a physician and a dentist who was one of the originators of the National Medical Association and became the NMA's first president of the NMA. And this gives me an opportunity to say something about the NMA's origins. As you well know, the AMA, which was formed in 1847, the American Medical Association, did not admit Blacks to membership. And so we endured that for a long time. That had several offshoots and impacts because of the fact that if you weren't a member of the AMA or any of the medical societies in the area where you practice as a physician, you weren't able to get your patients admitted to hospitals. And that was a huge problem. If you were a doctor, for instance, practicing in South Carolina, you would not be able to admit a patient who had gallbladder disease that you needed to operate on to the hospital under your name. You had to have that patient admitted under a white doctor, and that doctor served as your supervisor. You were possibly able to treat the patient in the hospital, but in most cases not. And the patients were assigned to what were called the colored wards, which are usually basement wards in those hospitals. Long history there. Dr. Montague Cobb was the person who was principally responsible for overcoming that type of segregated medical care. But Robert Fulton Boyd was the first president of the NMA, which we formed in 1895 at the Cotton States Exposition in Atlanta, Georgia, at the First Presbyterian Church in Atlanta. It was formed by 12 doctors, 12 dedicated Black doctors, to overcome the ignorance from the AMA, which we had experienced. And it took on the name initially of the National Association of Colored Physicians, Dentists, and Pharmacists. And it eventually was changed to the National Medical Association. Lots more that we could say about that, but bear in mind that this was the organization that we currently have, and is about 130 years old now, which we formed for the purpose of advancing the care of not only Black people, but also everybody in the country. With 50,000 adherents at the present time, Dr. Maxey and I, our previous presidents, of the National Medical Association, or the NMA. Next, please. Here's Dr. Nathan Francis Moselle, who you can see had that certain swagger as president and was dearly beloved as the 8th president of the NMA. Next. And Dr. Vivian Wiggins Pinn, who is the current president of the past President's Council of the National Medical Association. She was former head of the Women's Health Service and the Women's Health Initiative at NIH, and is very famous for that. Prior to that, she was head of the pathology department at Howard University, and before that, a research fellow at Tufts University in Boston. Dr. Pinn has had a building named after her at her alma mater at UVA, and well-deserved, and several other accolades. I can't say enough about my friend, Dr. Vivian Pinn. She and I worked at Harvard Medical School back in the 1960s to try to recruit Black physicians into postgraduate positions. At that time, Harvard Medical School had zero Black physicians in postgraduate trainee positions like fellowships, except for me. I was the first one in 1968. And we went on a tear to try to convince the university, which controlled 20 hospitals in that area, to recruit Blacks. Dr. Maxey was one of the people that we tried to bring to Boston, to Harvard, but he decided that he needed to go somewhere else, and eventually that was Harlem Hospital in New York. So we missed out on getting Dr. Maxey as one of our fellows, residents and fellows at Harvard, but we certainly recruited many more. And at the present time, if you go on to the Harvard Medical Campus, you see several Black faces and other minorities as well. And that's due to the efforts that we made to bring many on board. And Dr. Pinn was part of that effort for the effort of the Central Recruitment Council, which I founded in 1969 at Harvard Medical School. Next, please. Dr. Randall C. Morgan Jr. was the 96th president of the National Medical Association and is currently the executive director of the W. Montague Cobb Institute of the National Medical Association. He's an orthopedic surgeon, one of the highest rated, and is simply a wonderful leader in regards to carrying out the duties of what we call the scientific and the educational arm of the National Medical Association and research arm. So remember Dr. Randall Morgan. Next, please. And here we have our founder of the Black Health Trust, Dr. Randall W. Maxey, who was the 104th president of the NMA. Dr. Maxey often tells people that I was his mentor. Bear in mind that, as you will see, I followed him in the presidency of the NMA. So in many respects, he led me into being the president of that august organization. Dr. Maxey last year achieved one of the highest distinctions of the National Medical Association in regards to being named the National Practitioner of the Year. And I'm proud to have been the person to nominate him for that. I don't have to tell you too much about the exploits of Dr. Randall Maxey over the years as a nephrologist, except to say that he's always been very jealous about the fact that cardiologists occupy the most pristine and principal position in the medical hierarchy, and that we feel that we are the heart of the matter. rather than the kidney doctors. In any event, Dr. Randall Maxey, we should definitely recognize his greatness and his legendary service to Blacks in medicine. Next, please. Dr. Cedric Bright, who was the 112th president of the NMA. He's one of the younger people to come along, and he is currently the dean of the University of East Carolina School of Medicine. A wonderful young man who deserves every accolade that he receives. Next, please. Dr. Ron Kennedy Bailey, whom many of you know, the 113th president of the NMA. Dr. Bailey is a psychiatrist who currently is the head of psychiatry at Tulane University in New Orleans. He was here at King Drew as the head of psychiatry here for a few years. And he is a prolific writer, researcher, and clinician in the field of psychiatry. Next, please. I couldn't leave myself out, so there I am, and I think that you've heard enough about the things that I've done. It's mentioned here as my principal accolade that I'm the founder of the Association of Black Cardiologists 50 years ago, and I'm proud to have been able to found this organization, which is called the best small medical institution or organization in the country, which has survived years of struggles to try to bring the best in cardiovascular care to Black people. And we have resisted changing our name from the Association of Black Cardiologists on numerous occasions, including now, when people are saying that there's so much pushback against DEI and against us as Black people that we should give in and call it by some other name. I disagree. I think we have to stay the course and make sure that we are and remain whom we are. Thank you. Next, please. Dr. Oliver Brooks was the 120th president of the NMA. Dr. Brooks has had an esteemed career not only with the National Medical Association, where he was also not only the president, but the chairman of the House of Delegates for the National Medical Association for years, and is currently retired from his principal occupation, which was director of the Watts Health Center here in Los Angeles. Next, please. Finally, the civil rights period, and I'm coming more towards the end. I'm picturing here the facade of Freedmen's Hospital at Howard University. And the reason that I'm showing this is because this was the first land grant hospital and medical school in the United States following the Civil War end and the end of slavery. It is certainly pivotal, if not for any other reason, for that purpose. It was the first, and as a land grant hospital, it received federal funding for its operation, for its erection and operation. There's a lot to be said about that because there were certain things that had to be done within the restrictions that were placed on it by the federal government. But it did yeoman's work in bringing back about the best in healthcare for people. It has been challenged on numerous occasions. There's a new hospital, the Howard University Hospital, that has been built recently, more recently, but the old hospital still survives. So that's Freedmen's Hospital at Howard University. Many stories that we could tell about that institution. Next, please. This is, there was a hospital in Charleston, South Carolina called Old Roper Hospital. And this is from about 1950. And the reason I show this, and you can't see it well, is that although all the patients in the beds in this segregated hospital were Black, and this is 1950, not that long ago, really, and all the professional staff were all white. As I told you before, hospitals were strictly segregated at that time. And if Black doctors who mostly treated these patients on the outside tried to admit their patients to the hospital, they had to be admitted under white supervision. And all of the staff in the hospital were white, except for the janitorial staff or something like that. This was overcome, next slide, by the efforts of Dr. W. Montague Cobb and Dr. Hubert Eaton at a meeting of the National Medical Association. They were declaring that the suit against the hospitals for discrimination and segregation had been successful. And in 1964, as you know, the Civil Rights Act was passed. Part of that had to do with desegregation of hospitals. This is very important. This was the nation's first action against discrimination in hospitals. And it shows how powerful the effect of Dr. Cobb was, the work that he did, especially in meeting with a host of presidents. I think it was about 5 different presidents that he met with at the White House in what he called the Imhotep conferences to try to fight for civil rights, which we eventually won. Next, please. Now, from 1950 to the present, I'm finishing up on the emergence of the African American doctors. Next slide. Dr. John Beauregard Johnson, many of you recognize the name, J.B. Johnson, was the first African American cardiologist. He was one of my mentors, and what a great man. He was chief of cardiology at Howard University and at Freedman's Hospital, and such an iconic gentleman, very hard fighting and hard charging. He was the first person to recognize the importance of hypertension as a disease scourge in Blacks. Although prior to that time, they had been saying that Black people didn't have high blood pressure. We didn't have any problems with that. He changed the course of history in regards to making that disease recognized as one that we had to fight, and it's now recognized that hypertension in Blacks is seen more in the Black population than in any other population in the world. So he was the first African American cardiologist. There was another cardiologist at Meharry named Dr. John Thomas, who came up around the same time. But we recognize J.B. Johnson as being the first. And I feel as I'm one of his followers. Unfortunately, Dr. Johnson died in 1972 from a massive stroke, hemorrhagic stroke. He himself had hypertension, which he unfortunately hid and self-treated and suffered the consequences of that. But we lost a great man to history. Next, please. And in the current picture, the period, the establishment of the Association of Black Cardiologists certainly reigns supreme. I told you something about that before. I'm not going to go too much more into details about it, but that is one of the principal developments that we as Black physicians have involved ourselves in. And I'm proud to say that so much has been done in those 50 years, including moving on into areas that we never thought we would be involved in. Just to give you an example, we are now concerned about Black maternal mortality. And we recognize the fact that Black ladies who are pregnant often die from a cardiovascular disorder, something like what we call preeclampsia or eclampsia. That's a cardiovascular condition related to hypertension that occurs during pregnancy or in the period immediately after. And that's something that the ABC is now fighting. We have aligned ourselves with the obstetrician gynecology community, and we're carrying on to try to reduce the percentage of maternal mortality, which reigns high in the Black population, much higher than in whites. Next, please. I'm going to forego these next few slides because in the interest of time and move quickly through them. Keep moving until I tell you to stop, please. Keep going. Come back to that previous slide. Oh, yes. Just want to give you a little context to this cartoon that I'm showing. Here we see a Black lady who's sitting on the examining table in the doctor's office, and she's saying, "Give it to me straight, doc. I can take it. What's wrong with me?" And he responds by saying, "You're not a white male." Now, this is a white doctor talking to a Black patient, a Black lady patient. Let me first say that Black women have more of health problems, especially cardiovascular problems, than anybody in the universe. And we need to pay more attention to that. I frequently give lectures about Black women's heart health and recognize the fact that this is Heart Month that we're in now. And during Black History Month, we definitely ought to pay attention to Black women's heart health. We often have what's called Go Red for Women Day that was established by the American Heart Association. But we want to call attention to the big problem of cardiovascular disease in Black women. So this doctor was right in saying you're not a white male because of the fact that white males get the premier treatment in this country and attention. Black females do not. And that affects our longevity. We find that Black women are holding up, but still are behind from the standpoint of longevity, behind white women. And white women hold the top position as far as longevity is concerned. Black males and Black females hold the bottom positions. And so if she had been a white male, he would be able to do much more for her because his attitudes and his biases are in line with treating whites much more favorably than Blacks. So I wanted to give you some context to this cartoon, which is really not funny because it speaks the truth. And based on that, we need to speak truth to power to make sure that this type of thing does not continue. Next, please. So in the 21st century, which we're in now, medical education is something that we're all concerned about, and we're getting pushback against medical education for Blacks because of the fact that we're not admitting enough Black people into medicine. In 1975, we had less than 5% of Blacks. It was somewhere around 4% being entered into medicine, admitted into medical school. Today, it's not very much different. We've not done a good job in advancing medical education for Blacks and getting Black kids into medical school. And so that's one of the things that I've been very dedicated to in establishing scholarships and mentorships and so forth. And I encourage all of us to do as much as we possibly can, especially looking at this historical context and looking at the obstacles and difficulties that we have encountered. There is no reason on earth that we shouldn't have better representation for the 42 million Black people in our populace to have less than 5% of the physicians in this country. It is a disgrace. Next, please. And finally, I want to mention something about diversity, which you know is being pushed back against. We need more diversity in medical education, in healthcare provision and in all things health and medically related. And President John F. Kennedy made the following statement, which you'll see coming up as you continue the slides. So just continue and you'll see the script coming up on the right. Okay. If we cannot end our differences, at least we can make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, our most basic link to that is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. Keep that in mind, please, as we consider our future, as we consider the obstacles and resistance and challenges that we face today, and that we need more diversity, that we have to fight against what is being imposed upon us now in an attempt to push us back to those times when we had to go to the best sources that we possibly could, which weren't many, for our health care. We have survived, we have overcome, and we will continue to prevail, but only if we have a continued resilience that we have exhibited as a people. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams, for this excellent lecture. I want to call your attention to the fact that you probably didn't know that in the 1940s, there was not a field of nephrology. So what they did, they choose the very smartest cardiologists and gave them the opportunity to be nephrologists. And we thank you for that. Dr. Barbara Navid-Williams, you got any comments? I know we're past the top of the hour, but let's take a round of comments, Dr. Barbara Navid-Stevens.
Thank you, Dr. Maxey, and thank you, Dr. Williams, for continuing the tradition of us having a roundtable or fireside chat where we can tell the story of our people. I have long felt that it's absolutely important that our history be told to everyone, but I also feel equally strong that we shouldn't wait for somebody else to do it.
Exactly.
So continue beating the drum.
We will continue. And may I just mention one other thing? I always like to end a presentation with a reference to the Bible. And this reference has to do with the vision that we have had to bring better health care to our people. And my vision in particular has been to try to advance healthcare in every possible way that we can, including bringing in more Black doctors to treat our patients. And there is a passage in the Bible, which is from Proverbs 29:18, which says that without vision, the people perish. And I want you to remember that.
Thank you so much.
Amen.
Dr. Ivan Wilkes.
Wow. Dr. Williams, once again, very, very important lecture. Makes me understand that, as has been mentioned earlier, a lot of the folks who are running our country right now talk about we are moving to a merit-based government, a merit-based society. And my goodness, if only that were true, if only we were actually moving to a merit-based society, then the history that you've shared with us today, Dr. Williams, would make me very comfortable that we would do so well in a merit-based society, in a merit-based construct. If only that were true.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walsh. Dr. Hines, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. And then Dr. Williams, thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I have to agree with Dr. Walks, and just a reminder of the excellence that is profound and still continues to run within Blacks in medicine. And then just for if anyone is tempted to believe the message, right, that that's just not true. Like that we're there because we earn it, right? We're there because we were overqualified half the time, right? We did more with less and figured it out without the tools and all of those things. So just another reason to be proud.
Well, thank you so much.
Amen.
I know we're over time, but I want to give a chance since it's been so monumental. Are there any comments or questions in the chat, Dr. Neighbor-Stevens?
No questions, lots of comments.
Anything? Want to read one?
There's a lot of appreciation for the work that the presentation provided, and there were mentions of other people who have contributed in our fabulous history.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up one other person, Dr. Williams. You know about, I know you do, but Dr. Percy Julian, who was a scientist, a PhD, who invented what has now evolved to be birth control pills. You want to say just a quick word about him?
Dr. Percy Julian was not a physician, but he was a wonderful medical researcher who was actually the person who invented cortisone. Not sure that everybody is aware of that. He was the person that brought cortisone to national attention, and my mentor at Brigham and Women's was a beneficiary of that. He used it in the treatment of a number of people who had the need for cortisone to treat their Addison's disease and so forth. But he was the person who invented that, and not only that, but several others. He was a principal scientist, I believe it was at Merck, when he developed cortisone.
Smith, Klein, and French.
Pardon?
Smith, Klein, and French.
Smith, Klein, and French, yes.
Yeah. Upon a portion of privilege, I see a name of Dr. Crittenden. Is that Dr. Jake Crittenden?
I'm not aware of him. Could you give us some details?
No, I see him on the line.
Oh,
I'm listening. Can you unmute Dr. Crittenden? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Is your first name Jake?
No, my first name's William.
Okay. Where are you located?
Right outside Washington, D.C., Kensington, Maryland.
Well, welcome. I had a good alpha brother whose name was Dr. Jake Crittenden, who was a very capable surgeon in Cincinnati years ago. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Williams. This has been really enlightening. If there are no more comments or questions, I want to thank Simon for helping us with the technology. I want everybody to enjoy and have a great...
Dr. Maxey, before you go on, are there any other NMA presidents or anyone else from the National Medical Association who might be on the line, or from the Charles R. Drew Medical School, or from the society, who might have any comments?
I see Dr. Goffney.
Would Dr. Goffney want to offer any comments? He's very knowledgeable about, for instance, Harvard Medical
He's a
School.
surgeon from Harvard Medical School.
Yes.
Dr. Williams, when I saw that you were listed to do this presentation, I, of course, made sure I found some time to be here. You always do a wonderful job. And I don't know any other person today who could give that lecture. And so I just appreciate you so much. You give us all somebody to look up to. Good work.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Goffney. Dr. Goffney is past president of the Charles R. Drew Medical Society And when I had a relative hospitalized at a hospital some years ago, he was the one who gave us a daily update on what was really going on. And our family is forever grateful to him for that. Any other comments you note, Dr. Walks or Dr. Neighbor-Stevens or Dr. Hines?
Dr. Maxey, Dr. Lawson and Juliana Taylor both have their hands up, as does Dr. Sherrod.
Okay, let's go in that order.
Just wanted to quickly, I'm Dr. Lawson, just want to quickly note that recent editor of the Journal of the National Medical Association, and want to go out and encourage folks to read it, utilize it. It's not gotten the press that it should have gotten in terms of relevant articles, but in recent years, the impact factor is just as great as some of the others, including comparable to JMA and some of the others. Also note that Dr. Bailey is at LSU, by the way. And also want to note that psychiatry, unfortunately, was one of the last organizations to get a president in the national organization. That's Altus Stewart, the American Psychiatric Association. And that there are some of us who are fighting right now in terms of the national African American History Museum to get more people of medicine recognized, as well as the NAACP Image Award to get more medical people in these. And not everybody's an athlete or an artist, or it should be.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Taylor?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Williams, for that excellent presentation. I just wanted to mention that actually Dr. Percy Levon Julian was my uncle by marriage. One of my father's sisters by the name of Betty Sylvia Taylor Julian was married to Dr. Percy Julian's eldest brother, Dr. James Julian, who was a family medicine physician. They're both deceased at this point, who practiced in Baltimore, Maryland. And my Aunt Jimmy and Uncle, Aunt Betty and Uncle Jimmy, resided outside of Baltimore, Maryland. And fact, also there was one person.
He's from Randallstown, Maryland. And his daughter's name was Sylvia.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And the last of my first cousins of my, who were the children of my Aunt Betty and Uncle Jimmy, by the name of Emil Julian, unfortunately passed away last year. He was the last of all of the of all three of their children. And last, I'm sorry, Dr. Maxey. And last, real quick, there was one other person who's actually been a family friend for many years, Dr. Edward Cooper.
Oh, yes.
Who I'm sure you know of, yes, who was a cardiologist for many years, and the first Black president nationally of the American Heart Association in 1993.
No, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And all of your relatives I know quite well. They're all personal friends, including James, Emil, and Sylvia. Let's go with Dr. Sherrod.
Good afternoon, everybody, and commendations to my mentor, Dr. Richard Allen Williams, for such an outstanding presentation today. I just want to add in two people that you know about, but just kind of omitted, and that was Edith Irby Jones was the first woman president of the National Medical Association in 1984, although it started in 1895. So it took us 89 years to get a woman president of the National Medical Association, which was formed because of discrimination against us by the American Medical Association. And then we have the first Black woman Surgeon General was Joycelyn Elders from the University of Arkansas. And I'd like to say I was a medical student at Harvard when you and Dr. Vivian Penn were forming the recruitment council to bring Dr. Maxey and all those people to Boston. And we thank you for all of the work that you've done in promoting Blacks in healthcare. And I want to say that the Black Association of Black Women Physicians, actually, the idea came when I was attending a lecture by Dr. Vivian Penn to the Women in Medicine group at Harvard Medical School in 1974, when you were starting the Association of Black Cardiologists, which I didn't really know about.
Wow.
And also, Marilyn Gaston and Dr. Penn were the first two speakers at the International Coalition of Women Physicians, which is the first national organization of women physicians that met in Jamaica in 1992. So we thank you so much for presenting this, and I hope one day I will be able to present more to it, add more to what you just said, and broaden it out so we include all of the women contributions and others from the ones that are in our presence now. Thank you very much.
And it should be noted that Dr. Sherrod is the founder of ABWP, of the Association of Black Women Physicians, which is entering into, what is it, Jesse, about
our 43rd year.
43rd year, which is amazing, the development that has occurred under her leadership. And she certainly should be recognized as—
I want to recognize one other individual quickly. Dr. Ludlow McKay, you want to speak briefly about your relative who Dr. Williams knows well? Can you unmute Ludlow McKay?
Okay, I'm blessed to be associated with all you famous physicians. You know, Ludlow Creary is my first cousin and namesake, and through him, I've been associated with the NMA probably at least 30 years. I'm not a physician, but a health administrator, but I've lent, I guess, my skills to the NMA and people involved with the NMA through my work at National Institutes of Health. I helped form the collaboration with the NIH NMA Fellows Program. I helped start that program, and it's probably going into 20 some odd years that's been going on, and I take a lot of pride in helping getting that started, and it's been institutionalized, so I feel great about that. And I've worked with Dr. Williams and the Minority Health Institute, as well as working with the IANN, which is the Institute for the Advancement of Multicultural and Minority Medicine. So I've made my contribution to the field of Black medicine without being a physician. And so thank you for allowing me to participate and knowing Dr. Maxey and Dr. Williams and most of the presidents of the NMA for the past 20 years personally, and making contributions through the connections that I've had. So this has been a truly interesting session. I've known Dr. Williams, and I'm always learning from him. And today I've learned more. So it's been a learning experience. I'm glad I found the Zoom connection about an hour ago. So
well, thank you so much, Dr. McKay. And everybody have a very nice nice Sunday.
Dr. Maxey,
Yes.
if I may, before we leave, I want to just remind everyone that the Black Health Trust programs are archived and are available. So if anyone missed today's program, please let them know that they can find these programs. This is not a one-time shot. And the final comment is, Dr. Williams and Dr. Maxey and many others write. They make sure that our history is not lost. And I want everyone to feel convicted to record our individual histories, those relationships, those contributions, so that our history is not lost. Thanks, Dr. Maxey. Dr. Williams, you know you bad, brother. You just take it. You're just amazing. That's all I got.
I'm just trying to represent.
You
Thank you.
do. And
Doing it well.
we honor you, Dr. Williams. And I'm so glad you're my big brother. Everybody have a great Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you,
Good
Simon.
day, everyone.
All right.